It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Hello and welcome to Countywide. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Jen Cohen. Today we're talking with the Verde Valley Archaeology Center's Executive Director, Ken Zoll. Thank you for being here, Ken.
My pleasure, as always.
I know, it's exciting. We're headed towards the end of February, the beginning of March. March is Archaeology and Heritage Awareness Month. That's exciting.
That is correct. That is correct.
So you're busy, as always.
Yes, yes. This is, I think, the 48th annual Archaeology Month that Arizona has held.
Wow.
So
that is super impressive. One of the things that comes to mind, something we're going to focus on today, is theft and vandalism at these ancient dwelling sites and, of course, these rock art sites and things like that. We're seeing that more in the news. It's been going on forever. People are now just realizing, hey, that's vandalism and theft when they come and they move things, or they touch things, or they perhaps remove things from one of these sites they might find while they're camping. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in that department with you guys.
Okay. Well, it's not, fortunately, it's not pervasive, but it's regular, and it's disturbing. Just last September, we were doing a kind of an inspection hike at a site in Cornville, and came upon some fresh digging. In fact, we think we might have actually scared them away because their buckets and tools are still there. And normally when people are doing that, they take their stuff with them when they leave. But this was early in the morning, and it was obviously evidence of very fresh digging going on. And that same site was vandalized about 3 years before that in roughly the same area, but we didn't catch them at the time. It was obviously a couple weeks afterwards, but it was another example of that. And last October, we are the managers of 5 properties in the Verde Valley owned by the Archaeological Conservancy, which is like the Nature Conservancy, but instead of nature, they buy up archaeological sites to preserve. And we maintain them, we manage them, we keep the fencing up, the gates up. We have permission to go in there and take people in there. But we were monitoring one of the sites, and sure enough, somebody was digging in the room, one of those rooms, which had never been noticed before, that anybody had ever been there before. And then some people may remember several years back, there was an actress visiting the Sedona, and she wrote a big heart, painted a heart with her initials and her boyfriend's heart right on the red rocks near a ruin. So this stuff is happening, and because it's been recent again, we've decided to kind of push awareness of the Arizona Site Steward program, which is a volunteer program where people can visit sites on an infrequent basis and just monitor their condition.
Okay. Now, when you say visit, is it a couple of hours a day job? Is it one of those like park stewards where they camp overnight kind of thing? What are we looking at as far as a steward goes?
A lot of people in the area here, they hike anyway. And so all really we ask is that you're assigned a site, sometimes 2 sites, sometimes 3 sites, depending on how active you are. And we tell you where they're at, we show you where they're at, and we ask you to visit them maybe once a year. There might actually be 2 or 3 people assigned to the same site, so you kind of coordinate your visits, and so that the site might be visited, 3 or 4 times a year, not necessarily all by the same person. And those sites are the ones that are more easily accessible by the public, by tourists, what have you. And so there's 127 sites that have been identified that need to be monitored. And we could actually add a lot more, but we just don't have enough people to go out there and look at them. So why list them if we can't get out there anyway?
Wow, 127 sites that need to be watched.
There are 127 on the list that the Forest Service has asked us to monitor. That's a small percentage of the 2,500 sites that are here in the Verde Valley.
Wow.
So most of them are more remote, some of them are really high up in mesas, or relatively inaccessible, or they're very small and really nobody's going to do much to them. So these 127 are ones that are more readily accessible or extra important, that we want to be sure we monitor on a regular basis.
And the site stewards, as far as monitoring goes, they hike out to the location and they are looking for evidence of digging, vandalism, things like that?
Right. In the training, we basically tell them that we want them to visit the site. The first time they go there, if they want to take pictures or what have you, to remind themselves what's there. And then when they come by another time, they'll look and see, well, yes, somebody's been hanging around, somebody's been digging, somebody's been moving rocks, or maybe nothing has happened. And they would get online and report either that something has happened or nothing has happened, but just to record that they've been there. And so we know that it's being actively watched. So they get trained in evidence protection, how not to disturb a scene, who to call, how to report it to the law enforcement for the Forest Service, what have you. And so there's about 4 hours of training basically like that. And so in essence, they're basically just taking a nice stroll, a nice hike, and they're looking at a site and just watching for anything. Some of the sites we put signage up. The sign will say this site is being monitored by either electronic means or by site stewards. We do provide cameras to the Forest Service on a regular basis. They're motion sensor cameras, and so some of the sites that are more frequently vandalized will often get a camera. And the Forest Service themselves will go out there and retrieve the discs and whatever, but we provide the equipment for them. But we do, if we put up a sign, it means it is being monitored, and those are the ones that we go to.
So when an event or an incident has been discovered of looting or vandalism or digging, what's the protocol there? What do you do at that point?
Well, if they discover that a site has been vandalized in some way, if they see someone in the act, we tell them just back off. If you can take a picture without them noticing you, without you're getting in trouble at all, take a picture. Retreat. If you see a vehicle, take pictures of the license plate, that kind of thing, or description of the vehicle. And then maybe go back later when they've left and see what they've done, and then get online. If it's actively being happened, they have a number to call for Forest Service law enforcement, for example. If it's recent, nothing really you can do about it now, then they just go home and get online, and there's an active online system run by the state. And if someone clicks a button that says they found vandalism, it gets reported very quickly to the Forest Service archaeologist for the area, and they'll go out there and assess it and whether they want to bring a law enforcement involved or what have you. So, and they basically, for example, when I found the vandalism at Cornville, immediately what you do is you walk away, because if you get too close to the dig, you're stepping on their footprints. And one thing that they will do is, for example, I call it in, the first thing law enforcement does is send me a picture of your shoes that you wore that day, so they can distinguish my shoe prints from others. And so we basically back off like any crime scene, and just report it and try not to disturb anything around the area.
That's true, and you use the term crime scene. It does become a crime scene.
There is federal law that prohibits the destruction, injury, removal of anything from archaeological sites. Some people think, oh, it's relative. We had someone bring in some material to the center where their grandparents had and he admitted, dug them up in the 30s and said, well, there was no law then. Well, the antiquities law actually goes to 1909, and so they just weren't aware of it at the time. So there's always been a law since 1909 that protects archaeological sites on federal or state lands.
Have you ever caught anybody?
Here in the Verde Valley, we have not caught anyone. The Forest Service did find someone who was messing around, not so much damage, but messing around, and they did basically ban them from being on the forest for like 5 years or something like that, took them to court.
Wow.
In other states, they have actually caught people, raided their houses, found material in their house and such like that, and that could be pretty serious. Fortunately, we haven't had that extent of a problem here, but it's more of a nuisance thing. And you just don't like to see that.
That's true. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're talking with Ken Zoll. He's the Executive Director of the Verde Valley Archaeology Center. We'll be right back with more Countywide, so don't go away.
What does it look like when a life is truly changed?
I feel a sense of accomplishment because I built a house. This house has brought us financial independence.
It's a great place to raise a family.
Strength, fuerza.
When I look back where we've come from to where we are today, it makes my heart very happy.
Potential.
Potencia.
For me, this house means all of us together.
Sorry. Together.
Security.
Security.
Every family dreams to have their own house. This house changed our lives.
Habitat for Humanity is at work in your community and around the world. Through shelter, we empower.
We develop quality citizens who keep our core, our country, and our communities side by side on the winning side. Not for glory, but for honor. For a code that isn't written or spoken, but lived. It's what we do. It's who we are. It's the battle cry of our fighting spirit. Battles won. See all the battles Marines fight to win at marines.com.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've been talking about vandalism at ancient dwelling sites with Ken Zoll. He's the executive director at the Verde Valley Archaeology Center. It's been kind of a problem for many, many, many years, but you're working on that with the Site Steward program, which sounds really interesting. Now, if someone is interested in being a site steward, who is a site steward candidate? What do they look like?
Well, a site steward candidate is basically someone who is capable of hiking. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to hike up mountains or whatever. We just had a couple that signed up to be a site steward. They said they want to help and participate, but they really can't climb uphill or do that kind of thing. So in that situation, we'll assign them to a site that's relatively flat and not terribly far to get to. But basically anyone who's in good physical shape that likes to hike. And that's about all it really takes. There is a website. You have to register with the state, and it's AZ Site Steward Program.com. And on that site, you can file your application. It asks you who you are. It'll ask you questions like, are you in good physical shape? Have you had ever been convicted of stealing from an archaeological site? I mean, some really obvious things like that. It'll ask you, where do you want to do this? Do you want to do it in north part of the valley, south part of the valley kind of thing? And they'll ask for a reference that they'll check out. And then the state will then send that to me, and I will contact a person to provide training. And the training is only about a 4-hour in the class, and then there's about a 3-hour out in the field. So we give them a GPS location. So it's kind of a test. Do you know how to read your GPS to get to a site? Because most of the sites are not with a big sign saying turn here for the site. And so we will actually then meet after the 4-hour classroom session at an archaeological site, and we'll walk around it to look at what it's like, give them some pointers as to what to look for, etc. And then eventually they'll be assigned a site or two, and we'll take them to the site so they can get familiar with it. And then they just come up with their own schedule. There's no monitoring. As long as they do at least one site, one visit a year, they stay in good standing. So it's not a big commitment of time. And like I said, most people are out there hiking anyway, and this just gives them a target to hike to, basically.
Absolutely, gives them some incentive. I know I some days need incentive to go hiking. So
yeah, and part of the concept of it is, you know, once vandalism has occurred and you report it, well, it's happened. Okay, what are you going to do about it? But some people that are into mischief, if they realize that the site has been visited on a regular basis, they're always looking over their shoulder, theoretically they would be dissuaded from doing their mischief. And so it's more of a deterrent as opposed to a catch and release kind of thing. So
sure. So you're not policing.
You're not policing, absolutely not.
Yeah,
in fact, when they file their application, they have to agree to not carry a firearm to an archaeological site. that you never know what that could lead to, and the state doesn't want any part of that.
Yeah.
And part of that is once you're approved by the state, once I provide the training, once the Forest Service approves you as well, you're actually covered by workers' comp. So if you get hurt while you're hiking around, you fall and break a leg or something, which has never happened to my knowledge, but if it does, there is coverage.
Wow. But it is a volunteer position.
It's a 100% volunteer operation, yes. It's actually it was the first in the country, and it's still the largest in the country.
Wow. How many stewards do you have at this moment?
In the Verde Valley here, we have about 50.
Okay.
In the state, there's over 900.
Wow.
There's site steward programs in Colorado and California and New Mexico, but they're not of the size that we have here.
Right, and you said there were 2,500 sites in the Verde Valley, but over 150 of them were major enough that they needed site stewards.
Right, need to be visited on a regular basis.
Well, certainly. Now, do you ever have anybody that guilt overtakes them and they have to return something? Do you have people showing up at the center like, oh, I'm so sorry?
They're not that obvious about it. Basically, when we started the Archaeology Center in 2010, one of the things that we were told is get ready to find stuff on your doorstep. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And sure enough, we will show up one day and there'll be a Tupperware bucket full of pottery sherds that people had picked up along the trails or whatever. And or we've had batates, big grinding stones dropped at the front door. We've had manos and other stone tools dropped at the door. Whether they feel guilty or they just don't have room for it and they just don't want to talk about where they got it, I don't know, but they show up. So they're of absolutely zero value as far as a scientific perspective, but those are the kind of things we take into schools. We can use them as samples, examples. We do a lot of work with 4th grade classes because that's Arizona History Month. And they will also often go into class and they'll bring in pieces of pottery and they'll circulate it around the room. And, you know, if a couple disappear with little hands, the world's not going to end. You know, they're okay. We have had a teacher once that actually brought a student in a couple days later and he had walked off with 2 or 3 pieces of pottery and she made him come in and hand them to us. So we felt probably worse than he did, but that was kind of cute.
Huh. Yeah. That is interesting what you said, that they have zero historical significance because they're not where they were found. Right. So you have no record of them. They've been moved, touched, handled, so they're no longer valuable in a sense of history goes. Hadn't thought of that.
Right, yeah, and that's one of the other issues. People often don't realize it, but sometimes people will be hiking and they'll be near archaeological sites and they'll see bits of pottery and they may not take it home, but they'll say, oh, I'll take these 20, 30 pieces of pottery that I've found throughout this yard area and I'll make a little pile of them for the next person to see. We call those museum rocks, and basically once you've moved them from their original location, you've kind of lost some of the value archaeologically as well. Right. So they may not realize it, but where they took certain pieces of pottery, it may actually be in a room that to them they don't recognize as a room, but we would recognize as a room. So so that even is considered vandalism. It's not of a major type, but it's something we'd like to discourage.
Sure. If you see it, leave it. Don't touch it. Kind of like wildflowers. Don't pick them. You know, just leave them where they are.
You could, well, piece of pottery, we don't mind if they pick it up and they look at it and they decide, oh, is this a jar? Is this a bowl? What was this? I wonder where it came from. We do classes for the public on pottery. Where did it come from? How old is it? How to identify it? Because some people are curious when they hike, they find this stuff and they want to know more about it. So
sure, but you got to put it right back where you found it.
You should put it back. Yeah, you can just drop it down. It hasn't to be within a centimeter, but you know, you have to be crazy about it.
You're too relaxed, Ken.
Yeah, well, it's close enough. Close enough.
Well, we've got to take another quick break. We're talking with Ken Zoll, the Executive Director for the Verde Valley Archaeology Center. Hey, March is Archaeology and Heritage Awareness Month in Arizona, so we got more to talk about. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Do you feel like people are avoiding you? Don't be a dreaded spreader. Protect yourself and those around you from flu. Here's 3 things you should do. Get a flu vaccine each year. Take everyday preventive actions to stop the spread of germs, like covering coughs and sneezes and washing your hands, and stay home if you're sick. If you do get the flu, contact a healthcare professional right away and take flu antivirals if prescribed. Don't be a dreaded spreader. Take 3 steps to fight flu.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here, and it doesn't matter, your religion or, what part of the world you're from, that just sort of all that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
Yo siento que soy parte de esa bendición que ese niño recibió al irse a su casa ya sanado.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Mandalay Homes introduces the new Ion Series, a revolutionary new approach to home building innovation and energy management. Built on a foundation of industry-leading energy efficiency and sustainable building practices, the Ion Series home redefines how we use and manage renewable energy. Contact a Mandalay Home sales executive today to learn more, or visit one of our Ion Series communities throughout northern Arizona.
I'm Jen Cohen. We're talking about the Verde Valley Archaeology Center. We've been talking about vandalism at all the sites. We're talking with Executive Director Ken Zoll. Check out verdevalleyarchaeology.com. I've got it on here. There it is, verdevalleyarchaeology.com. Great website. All the information about everything we've talked about site stewards. You want to become a site steward? That's a great place to start. There's an open house happening at the center on Saturday, March 3rd from 10 to 4. That's a great way to get yourself introduced to the program if you want to become involved. Training will be on March 16th. There you go. Also coming up in March is the annual gathering of stewards. I bet that's just a blast, Ken.
That's fun.
And what else is happening for Arizona Archaeology and Heritage Awareness Month, which is March?
Yes, well, there's a lot of activities around. There are activities at the castle, Montezuma Castle, at Tuzagoot, so they should contact the Park Service or go to the website for that information, as well as the Forest Service, Red Rock District. For the center, every Tuesday in March, we have a lecture by an archaeologist at the Camp Verde Library. It's free. Every Thursday at the Camp Verde Library, we have an archaeology film. In fact, we have 2 from France, one on the reconstruction of the Chartres stained glass windows of the cathedral in France, and another one is about the rock art, the caves within France of that prehistoric Paleolithic rock art, and they have some new theories as to what that's all about. And then we have some local archaeology films as well. And we have classes throughout the month. All of this is on our website. Everything is free except for the classes. The classes have modest to expensive, depends on what it is. But the films, the lectures are all free.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, yeah. And every Tuesday in March is a lecture at the Camp Verde Library, and Thursday there's a film again at the Camp Verde Library. Of course, there's films going to be happening at Mary Fisher's as well. That's a neat area, not free there. Mary Fisher's a little bit of a fee.
We're negotiating.
Oh, there you got some clout, Ken.
Well,
so
we'll see. We'll see.
So really, there's tons of things happening. What are you most excited about? What's your favorite thing that happens during Archaeology Awareness Month?
It's hard to say. I've actually, it's a little off the subject, but I've become a Rhodes Scholar presenter for the Northern Arizona University's Rhodes Scholar program. So I give a class, 2.5-hour class on the archaeology of the Verde Valley to these tourist groups that come in. And there's been 2 in February, and there's another one in March, and there's a couple in April, and a couple in May. And so this kind of is a way to introduce people from outside the area to the archaeology and the richness of the Verde Valley.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's a pretty neat thing you do there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
I don't know how you find time to do all this.
That's what my wife says.
Oh. Well, you figured it out. You have to teach me your trick.
Okay.
Time management. Go to verdevalleyarchaeology.com. Check it out. Of course, March is coming. All kinds of events happening. If you want to get involved in the site stewards, if you want to, return something your grandfather may have borrowed from a site, you could drop it off at the doorstep.
No questions asked.
No questions asked. There you go. That's all the time we have for Countywide. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time.